Greetings, this is Beaker12 from the 94th, basically we're going to do this video. It's the emergency landing pattern video. The couple of videos that we had here in the past from the squadron already, the overhead traffic pattern video, some of this comes into play, but essentially it was kind of just a bunch of garbage and aviation nonsense that you kind of really didn't need to know, and it wasn't always as applicable in War Thunder as it could be. The emergency landing patterns, ELPs, quite the opposite. They're very practical, and some of this comes into play, actually. So, I'll cover a couple things, and then there'll also be a practical video that shows you what this all really is. Alright, so, first off, there's two different types of ELPs. The one you see here, which is a spiral or a oval type of emergency landing pattern, and straight-ins, which you guys probably already been using if you've been playing historical and even in arcade. So there's a couple different positions, and then I'll talk about what each one is really used for. So the spiral ELP is essentially for an engine out type of emergency, especially in single engine aircraft. What we have is what we call a single engine mentality, where we know we only have one engine, and we're prepared to put the aircraft down anywhere we deem necessary in case it happens to fail. This is what this ELP is actually really designed to do. It puts you in a position where you'll have enough altitude over a certain airfield or an open field, a road, where you can do a normal type of recovery and have as least amount of damage to the aircraft and yourself as possible. Alright, so each of these has kind of a little points here, high key, because it's basically a spiral. You're starting at 1/3 point down your recovery area, your highway, your runway, whatever it happens to be. So, and in high key, you're starting at 1,600 feet above that object. For what we're going to do, well, we're going to practice this, or I'll show you in the Spitfire Mark II. The field elevation for that is 234 feet, which means high key is 1,800 feet. So that's where you'd come in on. So you're already in the engine malfunction or engine failure already. So you're either expecting the engine to fail or it has already. So as you enter high key, you'll be slowly kind of doing a leisurely turn toward low key, in which you intend to lose 800 feet. Not always true, so that's why it comes kind of in like an oval sometimes. And this emergency pattern is basically to give you kind of like an overhead pattern already. So it's kind of like a pattern you're already used to performing. So it's basically to keep it as normal as possible, even though you have this engine out type of emergency. So it basically keeps you from having to do a bunch of calculations or basically flying by the seat of your pants, trying to figure out how this is changing, but instead keeps it kind of standard. So you're going to do a leisurely turn, do about your normal distance from where you would at the airfield, as you would do a normal approach, hopefully lose 800 feet by low key. Low key is like your base turn at traffic pattern altitude. So if you saw that video, or if you know a little bit about that already, it's like you would do your normal turn in and land. So low key for this is 1,000 feet MSL, so 800 feet off the ground in the situation, and we'll demonstrate that as well. Basically it's just prior to your base turn. So you're doing your base turn, you want to lose about another 400 feet or so, and base key is really just here as an academic kind of, this is what it's supposed to look like in the end, but your base key is basically straighting out to final approach or your short final. So while you're doing that, you should be figuring out on short final whether landing is assured or not, based on your height and distance away from the airfield or whatever you happen to be. So this is where you're going to start configuring, getting your gear and your flaps down. So the reason you're doing the ELP in a clean configuration is because you don't have your engine anymore, so you can't correct for minor elevation discrepancies and things like that. So you want to glide as clean configuration as you can to keep that drag off of you. So once landing is assured, you deploy your gear, your flaps, get ready for the normal landing. Prepare for a balloon up type of thing. If you're low to the ground or whatever already, or you're fast, your flaps are going to actually make you gain altitude as well as slow your airplane a lot. So you want to be careful of that and make sure you're ready to compensate for it as you land. Alright, that covers most of that for the spiral ELP. Like I said, turns out to be kind of more of like an oval, so you'll decide at certain points of the ELP whether you want to extend or turn early. High and low key is based on altitude rather than position around the airfield. So if it's an altitude restriction. If you're really high from your high key to low key, you're like 200 feet high or whatever, you might extend downwind a little bit more to get rid of that altitude before you turn in. It's kind of a judgment call, so make sure you have enough altitude to still make the runway. But basically just kind of a TLAR method, that looks about right to see if you can actually land it. Best glide speed, let's see. So you want to know your best glide speed for when you do these ELPs, especially with an engine out. Each aircraft got a different best glide speed. So it's kind of hard to judge in War Thunder because we fly different planes all the time. Best way to figure this out is your rotate speed when you kind of take off. Your rotate speed is about when you should be pulling the control stick or whatever aft as you take off of the runway. Basically just about rotate speed or just past that, above it is usually your best glide speed. So the best amount of distance over the ground as you would losing altitude. Pretty much covers the spiral ELP. In the video we'll talk a little bit about controllability check, stuff you'll be doing after a fight, where you're basically trying to figure out what's broke and what airspeed I need to come home at in order to perform the emergency landing correctly. So while we're going to that to save us a little bit of time here. And then the other ELP is the straight in. So your emergency landing spiral is for engine out, or you think the engine might fail, whereas a straight in is for every other type of emergency. So your control surfaces are jacked up, you have a failure in your elevator or something like that, or your gear, your flaps won't activate. That's a straight in type of approach you want to do. So for that, you're essentially going to do what you normally do. I'm sure you guys have already been doing it already. So it's going to depend on your aircraft. If you're a larger aircraft, you might be coming in too hot, so you might need to control your airspeed and such farther away. What I'll demonstrate in the video, I'll demonstrate a straight in for basically your gear and your flaps won't work. So in that case, for that one, you want to be as slow as possible on your approach. So when you round out and you land, you're landing at the lowest speed you possibly can to limit the amount of damage on the airframe. Because now you're not landing on wheels, you're landing on the aircraft itself. So I'll demonstrate that. That's not too hard. But your straight in is for every other type of emergency, and it's also one of the more applicable ones that you see all the time. So that's what I'll cover in the video. I'm going to basically show in the Spitfire Mark II your spiral ELP, where you could do that and how you can approach it, what it's supposed to look like, and then I'll do a straight in belly landing for the fact that my gear or flaps don't happen to work. So that's basically about it. Let's go on out to the aircraft and try it out.